Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know, something amazing, I guess.
A new Diablo game was long overdue, so I'll take whatever I can get. And while most of what I'm going to say may sound critical, there are two main things to remember here. One, I like this game enough to keep playing it, and two,
This latest entry does try some new stuff, and that alone is worth applauding.
even if it doesn't totally work, at least for me. I can't really compare Diablo 4, or D4 if you're cool, to D1 or D2 since I mostly skipped over those gems, and I don't have any footage for them, but I did invest a ton of time into D3, like way too much time. So I'd say I'm familiar enough with the series, and was very excited for the latest installment. To be short, Blizzard really didn't break the ARPG mold here. This is very much the same old Diablo in a lot of ways. However, there are some small, notable changes here. Off the bat, everything looks great. It's a huge graphical step up from the last one, but given the time between entries, it'd be weird if it wasn't. Likewise, the cinematics are amazing. You should sort of expect that stuff from Blizzard. Gameplay-wise, I like the addition of the many different bosses we get to fight instead of the same handful over and over you would grind in the past, even if a lot of them are reused more than a few times. Also, the addition of a dash button is something I didn't know I needed in an ARPG. This is such a small thing, but even going back to D3 for a short time, I found I was constantly trying to dash and was crushed when I couldn't. Character creation is also new here, and it actually matters because you do appear in some cutscenes, which is really appreciated in a game where you're usually buried under a ton of armor and looking down on your character the whole time. Those minor things aside, one of the major changes made to this entry was the shift away from procedurally generated maps to a single massive open world. While this might not seem like a huge change, it really shakes up the Diablo formula quite a bit. It was an iconic staple of the series, and I was surprised to see it removed. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I mean, gone are the days of loading into a zone and exploring it aimlessly in frustration for a specific thing that you need to slaughter, which obviously got really old really fast, but with its removal, the game becomes a little more predictable. It removes a lot of the annoying searching around, but it also removes those random encounters that could happen every 1% of the time that kept things just a little bit fresher. In making D4 open world, Blizzard also made the decision to make it like a semi-MMO. I say semi because there are other players around, but mostly only in the city hubs and at global events. It sort of begs the question, why? Why have this feature at all? This, of course, is not a huge negative, but having all these people around doesn't really add anything to the game. It's not bad, it's just kind of awkward. Them being there doesn't really improve the experience of the game, and only really serves to make me disconnect further from the I'm the chosen one narrative. Yeah, I'm the chosen one, and so are these several other thousands of people around me. So, is it so hard to say something like, you are a chosen one that is part of an army to help fight the forces of evil, or something that just fits better with having a ton of people running around? Another small but meaningful change was made to the gear sets, or lack thereof. Grinding for gear and bigger numbers is like 90% of what makes a game like this fun. Most of the classic gear colors are here, blue, yellow, and of course, sweet, sweet orange. But they took out green, and they replaced it with a second orange, or gold, for unique items, but it's just not the same. Finding a full gear set not only looked super cool in Diablo 3, but it added these game-breaking bonuses that made you feel like a god. The current gear effects are also super underwhelming. No more 10,000% increases in damage. While yes, it may be easier to find the core gear that you need, you are no longer really hunting for specific pieces, which I just sort of find less exciting. The gear that you often pick up is also ridiculous, often being so far below your current level that I'm convinced it has to be a glitch. Finally, Diablo and other ARPGs are built on endgame content, so this is where you'd expect to see the most drastic improvements to this installment. While there certainly is more to do in D4 over D3 after you finish the main story, I find the grind here less appealing. There are missions and dungeons, world bosses, timed events, PvP, quests for a spooky tree, and other ways to gather gear, but they all feel a little lacking in purpose. D3 had a great sense of incremental progression through its use of multiple world tier difficulty levels, and then scaling difficulty in Rift runs. D4 only has 4 world tiers, and the first 2 feel mostly the same. And the Rift run equivalents here are nightmare dungeons, but they don't have that same sense of progression or feel as rewarding as you slowly increase the difficulty. All of this said, Diablo is a living game. Blizzard is pretty good at adding in content over time, so I have no doubt that they will add in new stuff and balance out what is currently there to make it more fun. In fact, as I'm recording this, they just announced a huge update, so there you go. D4 is very much a Diablo game through and through. While there's nothing groundbreaking here, and many of the changes are hit and miss, I'm glad they tried something even just a little bit new. Well, for Diablo. I want publishers, especially ones with established franchises, to step things up each installment, even if it's in seemingly minor ways. We shouldn't want these companies to pump out the same copy-pasted thing with a different coat of paint every year, like EA does with all of their sports games. It might not always hit, it might not always land, but we don't want things to go stale. All that said, it's time for me to go back to hell and watch some numbers go up. Thanks for listening to me talk gaming.